To understand that, like, the being on the set with her was, the idea was it should feel like one of her dinner parties.
In 2012, paparazzi caught Meg Ryan looking completely different. Her face was puffy. Her lips looked fuller. Something had changed, but she wouldn't say what. For years, she stayed silent while the rumors grew louder. Then came the 2025 Oscars. When she walked on stage with Billy Crystal, millions of viewers froze. The woman they saw barely looked like the Meg Ryan from the 90s. Plastic surgeons started making lists of what they thought she'd done. The estimates were shocking. What really happened to America's sweetheart? The truth is more complicated than anyone imagined. Meg Ryan came into the world on November 19, 1961, in Fairfield, Connecticut. Her full name was Margaret Mary Emily Ann Hyra. Her mother, Susan Jordan, taught English and acted whenever she could. Her father, Harry Hyra, taught math and carried the weight of his Polish and Ruthenian roots with him. Their home was quiet and simple, nothing fancy. Just books, school routines, and Sunday mornings at St. Pius X, where Meg and her siblings learned the idea of community long before they ever learned about fame. She grew up with Dana, Annie, and Andrew, all of them learning the same rules about faith and discipline. Life stayed steady until Meg turned 15 in 1976. That was the year her mother packed her bags and left for New York City to chase a full acting career. The house changed overnight. Harry became a single father to 4 children, and Meg carried the memory of watching her mother's car disappear down the road. She has talked about that moment only in careful pieces, but the quiet in her voice says everything. When her mother left, something cracked inside her. People close to the family said the split felt sudden, almost like a door slammed shut without warning. Meg was just 15, but she understood enough to feel the sting. She rarely talked about the pain that came from that day. Even years later, when her mother tried to explain her side of the story in magazines and interviews, the distance between them stayed. That one event shaped how Meg viewed loyalty and trust. It sat quietly in the background of her early decisions, even when Hollywood started knocking. Still, Meg kept moving. At Bethel High School, she surprised everyone with how much she could do. She graduated in 1979 and was voted the cutest in her senior class. She won regional DECA contests. She earned the Dyer Good Citizen Award. And at 16, she won a statewide beauty contest that helped her get a scholarship to the University of Connecticut. She started studying journalism before switching to New York University. She worked hard because the cracks at home pushed her to create her own stability. She began appearing in Burger King commercials to pay for living costs. Those small moments in front of the camera became the first bricks in the path that led her toward Hollywood. By 1981, she was at NYU and almost ready to graduate. She was 1 semester away, but she got the role of Betsy Montgomery on the soap opera As the World Turns. They paid her $550 a week. For a young actress, that amount sounded like a lifeline. She decided to leave school and step fully into acting. She later said that film offers kept landing in her lap faster than she could process them. It was a bold move in a time when dropping out carried real risk. But her instincts were right. It pulled her straight into the spotlight. Around the same time, she changed her name. Margaret Hyra became Meg Ryan. Hollywood agents told her Hyra felt too ethnic and might limit her roles. She took the maiden name of her grandmother. It sounded clean and easy. It fit well on posters. It worked. Within a few years, Meg Ryan became a name that people connected with charm and warmth. She understood the game and shaped herself to fit it, knowing that small choices sometimes open the biggest doors. Her film debut came in 1981 with Rich and Famous, directed by George Cukor in what became his final film. She played Debbie Blake, a young hitchhiker caught in an older woman's story. Cukor pushed his actors hard, shooting for 12 hours at a time. It was a heavy introduction for a newcomer, but Meg kept up. The film itself may not have made her a star, but it placed her inside a real Hollywood set and showed her how tough the work could be. It also placed her in a box early, with people calling her the innocent ingenue before she even understood what that label meant. Then came 1983 and the low-budget horror film Amityville 3D. She played Lisa and had to deal with fake blood, shaking sets, and effects that were more strange than scary. Critics tore into her performance. One producer even called her wooden. Most young actors would have given up. Meg did the opposite. She enrolled in classes at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute. She studied, she practiced, she grew. The movie did not help her career, but the experience forced her to become stronger and better, pushing her away from forgettable roles and toward something bigger. In 1982, she worked on an NBC sitcom called One of the Guys. She played Lacey, Mickey Rooney's lively sister. The show was canceled after 12 episodes. She ended up with $5,000 in debt and had to work as a waitress in Manhattan. She auditioned constantly, sometimes for 50 pilots a month. This period was raw and humbling, but it taught her to stay sharp and keep moving through rejection, a skill she would depend on many times later. Then in 1986, she got the role of Carol Bradshaw in Top Gun. More than 200 actresses auditioned, but Meg's chemistry read with Tom Cruise caught Tony Scott's eye. The days were long, sometimes up to 16 hours. She got motion sickness from the F-14 simulators. She also clashed with Val Kilmer, calling him arrogant. But the movie became a huge hit, earning $357 million worldwide. She was only 24. She earned a six-figure paycheck, but the real change was the fame. Her face suddenly meant something in Hollywood. That same year, she starred in Armed and Dangerous. She had high hopes, even using her Top Gun money to support the film. But the comedy landed with a thud. It earned just $15.9 million at the box office against a budget of $12 million. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 9%. The director struggled with working alongside comedians. Candy and Levy rewrote scenes on the spot. Meg was disappointed and confused. She thought Top Gun would pull her upward, but Hollywood reminded her that nothing is guaranteed. In 1987, she filmed Inner Space, playing Lydia Maxwell. It looked fun, but the green screen work was intense. She spent 8 weeks shooting scenes that made her claustrophobic. Special effects teams used things like green onions to make miniature lung tissue. It was strange and exhausting, but something real happened during filming. She and Dennis Quaid fell in love. They married in 1991, and the movie became part of their story, both professionally and personally. Then came 1988, and the thriller DOA. She played Sydney Fuller, a student caught in a poisoned man's last hours. The movie required graphic autopsy scenes. Meg was 26 and suddenly face to face with images that shook her deeply. She later said she needed therapy to deal with the fear it brought up. It forced her to confront thoughts she never expected to face at that age. The role was dark, but it helped her understand her own emotional limits. Meg Ryan's famous deli scene in When Harry Met Sally came together in a way that almost felt unreal. She walked into Katz's Deli in 1989 knowing she had to fake an orgasm in front of a full crowd, and she did it with a tiny smile that hid how nervous she really was. The table she sat at now has a plaque on it, and people still visit just to sit where she once pretended to lose control. The whole idea came from the director's wife, and Ryan tried it in one smooth take, but Rob Reiner kept asking her to do it again. The crowd was real. The tension was real. She had to repeat the scene over and over until everything sounded just right. It even reached a point where Rob Reiner stood in front of her and showed her how to fake one, which made Billy Crystal laugh so hard he later joked that Mighty Joe Young would have been proud. The best part was that famous line, "I will have what she is having," which a diner delivered after watching her go for it. The movie ended up making $92 million, and Ryan earned around $15 million in residuals. That moment became one of the biggest scenes in her career, and it followed her everywhere. Her ability to improvise carried into the rest of the shoot. She created almost 40% of Sally's nervous lines on the spot, pulling from her own life after her divorce. It made her character feel real, but it also brought trouble. Billy Crystal loved to ad-lib too, and sometimes his jokes landed right in the middle of her focus. One day, he teased her about her fake laugh, and she walked off set, shaking with frustration. The shoot almost stopped for a day until Rob Reiner stepped in and calmed both of them down. Even so, those little bursts of raw emotion played a huge part in the film's charm. They kept everything loose, funny, and alive. Those moments helped shape the movie and helped shape Ryan into a true rom-com star. Right after that came Joe vs. the Volcano in 1990. She worked next to Tom Hanks under hot Hawaiian skies. The days were long and often stretched to 14 hours. She played 3 different roles, switching between Didi, Angelica, and Patricia, while trying to keep each one balanced in her mind. Hanks later admitted that her energy sometimes felt so strong that it seemed to outshine him. Their chemistry stayed warm on screen, but behind the scenes, everybody felt the pressure. Ryan wanted every role to feel real, and that intensity sometimes pushed into her scenes with Hanks. Still, her work showed how wide her range could stretch, and it opened the door for bigger, deeper roles. Then came something completely different in 1991. Oliver Stone cast her as Pamela Corson in The Doors, and she wanted to understand the world Jim Morrison lived in. She threw herself into research, even joining supervised LSD sessions to see how the mind shifted under that influence. Her agent panicked, afraid this would ruin her image. The film was filled with drug scenes, chaos, and heavy emotions. Ryan tried to keep up with its darkness, but the role took a toll. Critics did not love her performance, yet people inside the industry quietly respected the risk she took. It proved she was willing to walk into a room even when she did not know what would be waiting for her. By the mid-1990s, she shifted again, this time into animation. When she voiced Anastasia for the 1997 film, she spent around 200 hours recording lines and songs, even though she had never trained her voice for work like that. She worked from 1995 to 1996, and the story weighed on her. The Romanov family's execution haunted her dreams. She felt close to Anastasia while recording the fearful moments, and she carried that emotion home with her after each session. Her performance brought warmth to the character and helped the movie become a classic. But behind the voice was a woman losing sleep from the sadness she was carrying. Right after that came a peak in her stardom. In 1993, she became the heart of Sleepless in Seattle, a film that earned more than $227 million worldwide. On its opening weekend alone, it brought in $17 million. People everywhere fell in love with her soft voice and quiet charm. At that time, she became Hollywood's top female earner, making around $20 million per film. But while the world adored her, she struggled. Paparazzi chased her non-stop, and the pressure made her chest tighten until she felt panic rise in her throat. She hid most of it from the public, but the fear stayed with her during filming, during promotions, and during travel. Even with all that chaos, the movie turned her into America's sweetheart and placed her firmly at the front of the rom-com world. There was a moment on Sleepless in Seattle that showed how far she would push herself. The big finale was set on the Empire State Building. She wanted her steps to feel real, so she did most of her own stunts. The rain was freezing. She slipped while running and dislocated her shoulder on the 102nd floor. The pain was sharp enough to make her gasp, but she kept trying to finish the scene. She later needed surgery and had to wear a sling during the 1994 press tour for her next film, IQ. The actual film scene was shot on a replica in Seattle because the owners of the real building refused full access, but Ryan's injury stunned everyone. She still finished the tour as if she had never been hurt. Then came When a Man Loves a Woman in 1994. She played Alice Green, a woman drowning in alcoholism, and she prepared by attending real AA meetings for months. She listened to stories of broken families and slow recovery. Some of it hit close to home, because she also came from a family with a history of alcoholism. The weight of the role pushed deep into her mind. She had a relapse scare during filming, proof of how deeply she was living inside the character. Her performance earned her a Golden Globe nomination and helped the public understand addiction in a more human way. In 1998, she stepped beside Tom Hanks again for You Have Got Mail. They wanted the romance to feel soft and natural, so they exchanged playful emails for 6 months before filming began. It worked. The chemistry on screen felt effortless. The movie reached $250 million worldwide and held her place as the queen of romantic comedy. But underneath, there were cracks. Ryan clashed with Parker Posey, whose sharp energy made scenes feel uncomfortable. The tension grew until it almost turned into a physical fight. Ryan asked for script adjustments because she felt personally attacked by some of the lines. It was a hard shoot, but when the film finally reached the screen, the sweetness between Hanks and Ryan made all the trouble fade. Around the same time, she took on City of Angels in 1998. The role demanded long crying scenes, and she did them over and over, sometimes more than 50 times. She spent weeks walking through grief, as if it lived on her shoulders. The final death scene was filmed on Old Mill Road in Crestline, California, and it asked her to fall into a softness that left her trembling after each take. Fans saw a new side of her. They saw a woman able to walk away from comedy and stand in the center of pain without losing control. Her personal life looked golden on the outside during these years, but behind closed doors, everything was falling apart. She married Dennis Quaid on February 14, 1991, in Paris. They had met on Innerspace in 1988 and dated for 2 years. The wedding looked magical with white gowns, tuxedos, and a bright Paris background. Hollywood called them the golden couple. But just months later, the cracks opened. Quaid had entered rehab before the wedding and had struggled with cocaine addiction for years. His relapses came quickly and hard. In 1998, he was found unconscious at their home, forcing an intervention that left everyone shaken. The darkness of addiction sat quietly in their house, and Ryan carried more than people knew. On April 24, 1992, she gave birth to their son, Jack Henry. The labor stretched for 28 hours and ended with an emergency C-section. Jack weighed 10 pounds, which made the delivery even more difficult. Ryan later admitted the shift from earning $15 million per film to sleepless nights, and a new baby left her overwhelmed. She hid most of her postpartum depression from the public, but therapy later helped her open up about how close she came to breaking. Her honesty later encouraged other women to talk about their own struggles. The marriage continued to fall apart. In 1993, she discovered Quaid's infidelity. In 1996, she found hotel receipts that proved an affair with a Santa Monica yoga instructor. Counseling followed. Quaid confessed to 12 one-night stands during the time she was filming Sleepless in Seattle. Ryan felt used and betrayed. The trust between them turned thin and fragile. In 1995, she turned to a vegan diet for health and peace. Quaid entered rehab again. Holidays became tense and heavy. Then, Thanksgiving 1997 broke everything wide open. Quaid relapsed and, in a burst of rage, smashed a $50,000 vase that Tom Hanks had gifted them. Ryan hid the incident from the press to protect Jack, but the damage inside the marriage grew deeper. In 2000, she finally filed for separation. She discovered that Quaid's affairs stretched across nearly 8 of their 10 years together. She wrote in her journals that the betrayal felt soul-crushing. The custody fight was intense. She eventually received primary guardianship and $10,000 in monthly support. Their divorce ended in 2001, closing the chapter on their public love story. She focused on Jack after that, rebuilding her life piece by piece. In time, she found a quiet strength and chose to move forward, carrying no spotlight, only herself. Meg Ryan stepped onto the set of Proof of Life in mid-1999, carrying more weight on her shoulders than anyone could see. She played Alice Bowman, a kidnapped wife in a world that felt tense at every turn. Russell Crowe played the man trying to save her, and their chemistry felt sharp on camera. Soon, it slipped off the screen too. A quiet affair started while she was still married to Dennis Quaid. Crowe sent her a $5,000 diamond earring as a secret gift. Paparazzi caught it in June 2000, and tabloids pushed the photos everywhere. Then the trailers came out in October 2000, and the world began whispering. Quaid went on record calling Ryan the other woman during interviews, as if he had become the injured party. The noise spread fast. The film earned only $63 million at the box office and missed its bigger budget. That 9-month affair took place while both stars were in fragile moments of their lives. And later, Ryan said it all came from emotional weakness that had been building inside her long before the cameras rolled. Early 2001 came with a surprise. Russell proposed to her in Sydney with a 10-carat diamond ring during a quiet trip that felt like a secret. Friends knew. The media knew. The couple never announced anything, but the ring told its own story. Then the whole thing cracked. They fought, and the trigger came from Crowe's jealousy over her old connection with Tom Cruise from Top Gun. After that argument, Ryan flew back to New York alone. She made a promise to herself on that trip that she would never fall into a romance with a co-star again. The 9-month affair ended there, leaving a trail of broken emotions and damage that reached into both her life and career. The public came swinging next. The National Enquirer published stories that painted Crowe as violent. Ryan pushed back in a 2001 Vanity Fair interview and revealed that Quaid had been unfaithful long before she ever met Crowe. She flipped the story, but many people chose not to listen. Miramax canceled a $12 million rom-com deal because executives believed her sweet image had dissolved. Studio bosses felt the scandal had ruined the clean persona that made her famous. Ryan stepped out of sight for a while. She went into therapy. She stayed alone in Malibu. She tried to process the collapse of her marriage, her career, and the trust of her audience. This was the start of a long slide away from the center of Hollywood. During all this, Hanging Up came out in 2000. She starred with Diane Keaton and Lisa Kudrow, but the film fell apart at the box office with only $51.9 million on a $60 million budget. People behind the scenes said she showed up late more than 15 times because of custody fights with Quaid. That reputation cost her a Jane Austen biopic that had once been hers to lose. After release week, the film sank out of the top 10 in the United States by its third week. Critics called it bland and called her performance distracted. This was the moment Hollywood began to label her as troubled. Then came Kate and Leopold in 2001 with Hugh Jackman. It made only $47 million worldwide. Behind the scenes, she battled exhaustion from the divorce and the last waves of the Crow affair. Director James Mangold added therapy scenes into the script, only to help her cope, because her pain was leaking into every take. Those scenes did not exist in the original script, but they gave her space to breathe. Even so, the weak box office confirmed what studios already feared. Her charm was slipping away from public reach, and the cracks were too visible to hide. Then she shocked everyone within the cut in 2003. It was raw and filled with intimate scenes with Mark Ruffalo. She wanted to break out of the sweet roles she had been trapped in. Her agent begged her not to do it and warned her that it would destroy her rom-com image forever. She did it anyway. The response hit hard. Critics asked her why she would be naked. Talk show hosts questioned her loyalty to her fans. The film lost $74 million, and her place in mainstream films collapsed even further. Hollywood only wanted her as America's sweetheart. They never allowed her to grow. Then came Against the Ropes in 2004. She trained with real fighters and ended up with 2 broken ribs that she tried to hide. MGM shelved the film for 2 years because her name had become difficult for marketing teams. She had been promised $15 million for the project, but the long delay forced her down to $4 million. Critics called her miscast and said the story felt tired. She later admitted that the whole experience drained her and deepened her feeling of isolation from the industry she once led. Another chance appeared in 2008 with The Women. She directed and starred in it, but the film stumbled with only $26 million domestically and $50 million worldwide. There were noisy fights behind the scenes with Diane Keaton over script cuts. The atmosphere turned bitter. Once the movie released, reviews crushed it. Soon after, Ryan stepped away from acting in 2009 because she needed distance from the noise and the failures. From 2010 to 2014, she lived quietly in New York and focused on raising Jack Quaid. She refused nearly 20 rom-com scripts. She protected Jack from the business and pushed him toward a normal life while he explored his own path. He appeared in Adventureland in 2009, then later joined Tisch School of the Arts. He stayed 3 years before leaving to pursue acting full-time. During these years, Ryan rarely showed her face publicly. She kept her world small and focused only on her son, building a life that felt different from her old one. Then in 2012, paparazzi photos appeared, showing her with a puffy face. Rumors filled the internet instantly. People said her lips looked fuller, and her features looked changed. She refused to confirm anything. She refused to deny anything. The silence only grew the debate. Some said it was age. Others said something else had happened. Those photos became part of her public identity, and the whispers followed her everywhere. In 2015, she tried something new and made her directorial debut with Ithaca. She funded 30% of the $5 million budget herself because studios refused to support it. Filming lasted only 25 days in Virginia. Tom Hanks joined for a cameo. Reviews were mixed, but the film brought her a new sense of purpose behind the camera. The same year, she appeared in Fangirl, a small indie that released at the LA Film Festival in June 2015. It never got a wide theatrical release, which hurt her hopes of reconnecting with bigger audiences. Afterward, she studied directing at Sundance Labs and stepped even further away from the old image that had once defined her. Her personal life stayed stormy. Her relationship with John Mellencamp ran on and off from 2010 to 2019. His bipolar episodes created strain. And in 2014, he ended things through an email. Soon after, he appeared with a woman 23 years younger. Ryan called those years emotionally exhausting in sealed court papers. They got engaged in 2018, but split for good in October 2019. Then Jack landed The Boys in 2019. Ryan quietly helped him record his 2021 audition tape, but she did it without attaching her name. She wanted him to have his own identity. He had dealt with cruel comments in 2016 about his looks, but she stood behind him and guided him through it. Their partnership grew stronger. She supported him quietly, and he defended her openly. Then in 2023, she stepped back into the spotlight with What Happens Later. It cost $2 million to make, and she both directed and starred in it. It came out on November 3, 2023, and earned $3.4 million worldwide, with $1.5 million in its opening weekend across 1,492 theaters. Some critics liked her performance, others did not. Still, it showed she was willing to try again. 2 years later, she walked onto the 2025 Oscars stage with Billy Crystal to present Best Picture. Viewers froze when they saw her. Her face sparked a flood of memes. People noted tighter skin, changed lips, softer eyes. Dr. Samuel Gulpanian, a plastic surgeon from Beverly Hills, said the transformation began between 2006 and 2011 and listed possible mini facelifts, brow lifts, and fillers. By 2025, many believed she had spent over $100,000 on procedures. Others defended her, saying the industry had pressured her for decades. Then, she finally spoke. In 2025, she appeared on a podcast and talked about body dysmorphia. She dismissed the surgery rumors as stupid meanness. She also revealed how badly the affair and the divorce had crushed her. She admitted that she once thought of leaving Hollywood entirely because of the humiliation. She said she felt sabotaged and emotionally broken. The honesty hit home for many listeners. In 2024, she opened her own production company. One of the first projects focused on her divorce from Quaid and the custody battle that cost her more than $2 million in 2001. She kept Jack away from the project to protect him from old wounds. The stories she planned to tell came from real pain and carried the voices of women who had been overlooked. It became part of her new chapter behind the camera. Now, at 63, she says she is evolving into authenticity. People notice the new look that makes them look twice. She says she is shedding the old version of herself. She also announced a Netflix series about classic Hollywood scandals. It is set to release in late 2025, with her as narrator and executive producer. She wants to reveal the stories she once lived through, stories filled with secrets, pressure, and fame at its darkest.